Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming. After the various trailers and that recent Red Bull event, we've now had a good look at the gameplay of Shadow of the Erdtree. Further, we've had multiple interviews from Miyazaki himself. At this point, I'm able to put together a little list of the most important concepts and details to have in mind going into the DLC. What you can do right now, sure, but also exact locations and details in the DLC itself. Let's get straight into it. First up, yes, the DLC starts at Miquella's cocoon in Mohgwyn's palace. As you likely know, that means you need to have defeated Radahn and then Mohg in the palace to get yourself access to the DLC. There's been a lot of references to how 60% of the Steam player base who opened the game haven't even done that, but things have changed up into the lead of the launch. Mohg isn't an easy optional boss, that's for sure, but a huge amount of players are leaving their summon signs just outside his door right now. There's a lot of community help to get people going. But if you're unaware, a little tip I want to give is the wondrous physic crystal tier that basically counters the main Nihil mechanic. There's the red purifying crystal tier, which you acquire by defeating Eleonora the Violet Bloody Finger. She's located at the second church of Marika in the Altus Plateau. You just need to enter the church and she'll attack you, you defeat her, and it's that easy, you get the crystal tier. The purpose of it is to cleanse the Lord of Blood's curse, and to use it in this fight you don't need to wait until he starts doing it. You can drink it before he begins the Nihil cast, or even before the fight begins if you're quick to get to it. Essentially it prevents the blood loss occurring with the curse, making that entire mechanic a non-issue. So I couldn't really recommend anything more impactful than that to make unlocking the DLC easier, so that's a pretty big tip. Next up, once you enter the DLC for the first time, we know the exact location of the first scadutree fragment now. At the entrance of the DLC, you'll open up to this incredible view of the area, which is called the Gravesite Plains. If you follow the main road down and to the left from this perspective, you'll soon see your first Miquella cross drawing you closer. This is where you'll find that first scadutree fragment, at the base of the cross. Also, there's some important NPCs to talk to here too. Now you have your first fragment though, you can use the grace right next to the cross to use the new menu option. Select the Shadow Realm Blessing option and you can consume the fragment to increase your damage and reduce the damage you take. This is a permanent buff to yourself while in the Land of Shadow, and you can't go back once you do it. It also has no effect on the normal game that lands between. As another thing to know, we don't exactly know how many blessings we can achieve in the full DLC, but the wiki currently suggests that there's 4 ranks to it. The first requiring just 1 fragment to activate, the second requiring 2, the third requiring another 2, and the fourth needing 3. It's possible those numbers are just wrong, but it's a good idea to have in mind. You'll find these fragments all over the DLC, and as we've been told, you'll be rewarded by properly exploring the key areas to find these. Intentionally not using them is probably a bad idea for a first playthrough, akin to a challenge run, but that's up to you. Even with 1 blessing active, this player was getting chunked out as a level 150 with fully upgraded gear, even against normal enemies, so it's no joke in that DLC. Also, you can find a second option in the Shadow Realm Blessing menu called Revered Spirit Ash Blessing. This will increase the damage your summons do, but also make Torrent more survivable as well. Apparently, those are going to be found in the new Catacomb areas and other side content compared to the main path, based on what the press event players experienced and talked about. Next up though, you'll likely know there's over 100 new weapons in the DLC, and there's an impressive total of 8 new weapon types within that, which is awesome. One weapon type that was hidden away from the gameplay trailer or anything we'd seen before is the very cool looking Great Katana weapon type. We were unsure of what this weapon will scale with, because as it turns out, it is just a massive heavy looking katana. In this case, during the Red Bull event, creators were given a bunch of the new weapons to try, like this basic Great Katana. Again, these preset characters were level 150 with fully upgraded weapons. This Great Katana we were given was scaling with Keen for Dex, but interestingly, it was only scaling at a B grade. The required stats to use it were 14 strength, 18 dex, so that suggests it is indeed a dex weapon despite the size. As a katana, it comes with some built-in bloodlust buildup, but with the attacks being slower as there is heavier, I don't expect this to be a great bleed weapon. The moveset has been revealed to be very versatile though. I really like it. The light attack combo features swings, thrusts, even some vertical hits, good for higher up enemies. The heavy attack combo is more about horizontal swings, which is great for cleaving multiple enemies at once. The jump attack seems very efficient. The length of the blade combined with say a running thrust or that jump should have some good range. The weight of the weapon surprised me though. 9 compared to say 16 weight for one of the new colossal swords we saw, and it came with a new unique Ash of War called Overhead Stance, which holds the blade above your head, ready to strike Ishin style. You can follow that up with one heavy hit or multiple 3 slams down back to back. So I'm assuming that's light versus heavy after activating the stance. Now speaking of weapons, I'd also like to highlight the exact location of a new pot to throw. This massive heavy pot throw was shown in the gameplay trailer. The player throws it overhead, resulting in the biggest explosion from a thrown item that I've seen. How often will you be able to use something like that? It definitely seems quite often if it is just a new pot type, called the Hefty Cracked Pot. You can find the recipe to start crafting these in the opening area, just beyond the gravesite plains. By heading down the main road, you'll come across the Scorched Ruins, and as you would pass down that main road under a bridge above you, instead before that, we climb up on the right of this wall to spot the special item on the ground. This is the Hefty Crack Pot location, and with this key item, you'll now be able to start crafting these massive, throwable pots en masse. I expect high fire damage from these, especially if you've held an enemy up beforehand. Now, as another thing to think about, I speculate that fire damage is going to be a great element to use in this DLC. And the reason I think that is not just this pot. The new weapon type, the perfume bottles, indicate that might be the case. As we saw from the stats, this entirely new awesome weapon type is using 100% fire damage as the source, which surprised me because there's absolutely fire resistant enemies in the original game, even some enemies totally immune to it. While it's true that some enemies are very vulnerable to it, not all of them are. So if your main weapon cannot deal any other damage than fire, what if the boss is totally immune to that? Because of that, I think that's going to be unlikely in this DLC. They'll want us to use this new awesome weapon type with this entirely new moveset. And I'm hoping that they've learned from the whole faith-resistant bosses of the original game that they shouldn't do something like that. They're surely going to want to encourage us to use a new weapon type with this new moveset, which by the way spreads the explosive fumes out X shapes ahead of you when you do the light attacks, or with heavy attacks, you'll spin around doing a circle for a nice explosion around yourself. Also, the perfume bottles we saw did not have a unique Ash of War, just the standard kick. So it's also possible that you could augment the weapon with a new Ash, and then also maybe change the damage type too. Next though, let's talk about the first major boss of the DLC, the Divine Beast, the Dancing Lion. Outside of the mechanics of this boss and all the potential spoilery stuff, it's important to know that this is the first major boss. The idea of this boss is to be the gatekeeper, to wall further progress, a skill check and a build check too. Are you strong enough to pass and go on to harder stuff? It's going to be there to test you. It should be noticeably harder than any of the other stuff around this area in the opening section. If it is too hard, you can leave and come back when you found new items, maybe leveled up, or made things literally easier by using more Shadow Realm blessings. But if you think you're ready, which, could be at the start of the DLC for you, the location of this first major boss is Bera Rut. That appears to be the purged city Messmer was destroying in the story cinematic. That is, this location as we're shown from these different cool shots of different areas of the DLC. Where is that though? Well, I believe that location will be uphill following the main road past the first Miquella cross. The idea of those crosses is to guide you on the main path to where the main stuff is. We have that shot of the first Miquella cross here, and then the follow-up shot with a similar walled structure behind another cross, which does appear to be where that arena is. The main path where I'd go if I wanted to progress as soon as possible. If you're also wondering where to go and what to do to explore every location before following that main path, you got to keep in mind From Software's design is to generally be subtle but use natural draws to locations. An example of that was shown to us and talked about. These bright lights on a wall that do draw the eye. When we go over there, it turns out it's quite a hidden little cave entrance. As we enter here, it becomes a lava area, the one we saw teased in the various trailers. This is the ruined forged lava intake. It looks like a large hidden section that seamlessly is transitioned into compared to, say, the obvious catacomb doors that were plonked everywhere in the original. This was a big goal as discussed by Miyazaki himself, to make the open world more natural in how it adjusts into set piece areas. So expect a lot of this subtle style in the DLC, and if anything looks suspicious or even interesting, there's probably something going on there. Next, a quick highlight of the interesting boss of the Bonnie Jail. This is the frozen jail section the creators were playing in during the Red Bull event. At the bottom, you have this unique boss fight with the curseblade Labirith. This guy has a pesky mechanic. He cloaks the room in shadow, perfect for his very fast and aggressive nature. While he is fully cloaked, he becomes literally invisible, meaning you cannot even auto-target him. To overcome that, we need to expose him, which can be done without dealing with the mechanic directly. As I saw, you can use summons, and as AI, they will ignore the invisible mechanic completely and attack the boss, even so, never losing track. That'll tell you exactly where the boss is even if it's fully invisible to you. Now, the exact way to expose the boss hasn't been made fully clear from all the attempts that I watched, but it does appear to be sources of light do seem to bring him out of that darkness. So by just equipping and activating a lantern, that does seem to bring him out. But there's an original item, the sentry torch, which entire purpose is to expose cloaked assassins. I don't think these players had that, but if you bring that to this boss fight, it may very well make it much easier. Either way, just having a light source equipped does seem to have an impact. And lastly, I just want to heavily suggest to you that you run a build with 60 vigor in this DLC bare minimum. Even the basic enemies, as seen here, will use a variety of weapons and even special abilities as though they're using Ashes of War. The pre-built characters we saw in here were level 150 and had about 50 vigor on average. They're taking massive chunks of health whenever they take damage though. Everything is super dangerous. So I strongly recommend a greater health pool to make up for the many mistakes you'll definitely make while exploring and learning for the first time. Sure, you could have higher damage by sacrificing health stats, but my number one rule I've always had in these games is bigger health pool means more mistakes without dying. Therefore, you just have an easier time learning after you survive those hits. So lean on that if you need to. I certainly will do in my first playthrough. But there you have it. A pile of things to know from all the new gameplay footage, trailers and interviews, any sources of information we could find. We'll be covering everything you can imagine about this DLC on the channel after launch, so expect lots of videos when we do get to play. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thank you for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.